So you've been thinking about getting yourself a mirrorless camera and you're wondering, how is this going to be different from my DSLR? Am I going to have issues with lens selection or battery life? Which one is better for hybrid creators who do photo and video? Maybe you're even thinking, should I upgrade my DSLR to a different DSLR instead of mirrorless? In this tutorial, I'll be breaking down 9 key differences between DSLR and mirrorless cameras that you need to consider when you're making a decision. And be sure to stick around for one of my last tips because I guarantee that you're going to learn something new you didn't know about before. And if you like this video and you want to learn more the speedy way, efficient, clear, and no fluff, then be sure to subscribe to my channel. I promise I'll never make a 10-minute video that covers a 1-minute topic. Now, before we jump into the 9 key differences, let me break down how a DSLR and how a mirrorless camera actually works. With a DSLR, which stands for digital single lens reflex, light travels through the lens and reflects off a mirror inside the camera into something called a pentaprism, which allows you to see what you're shooting through the viewfinder. When you actually take the picture, the mirror flips up, allowing light to hit the sensor and capture the image. Your shutter speed controls how long the mirror stays flipped up, which is also known as the exposure time. With a mirrorless camera, there is no mirror system. Light passes directly through the lens to the image sensor, which provides a preview of the image on the electronic viewfinder or the LCD screen. Now that I've broken this down for you, let's jump straight in by talking about the first difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, which is the form factor. DSLRs are typically bulkier and heavier due to that internal mirror mechanism that I explained. Not only is the mirror mechanism a large physical component of the camera, but it also necessitates a deeper camera body to accommodate the motion of flipping up and down. In contrast, mirrorless cameras are typically smaller and lighter because they eliminate the mirror mechanism and they exclusively use screens to display images directly from the sensor. Now, I know a lot of photographers express concern about this, especially when it comes to actually holding and using the camera. But in my experience, I've had no issues with the mirrorless form factor. And quite honestly, if you do find it to be a problem for you, then just add a battery grip to your camera and call it a day. Now, the second difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is in-body image stabilization. In-body image stabilization, also known as IBIS or IBIS, is a feature that actually stabilizes the camera sensor to counteract camera shake. The key advantage of in-body image stabilization is versatility. It works with any lens attached to the camera, and it provides a clear benefit for photographers and video producers who are using older or more affordable lenses that lack stabilization. This makes in-body image stabilization an invaluable tool for shooting in low light conditions, for using slow shutter speeds, or for capturing video handheld, which enhances the overall sharpness and quality. And most traditional DSLRs don't include in-body image stabilization. There are a couple of exceptions, like the Pentax K1 Mark II or the Pentax KP, but for the most part, this feature is limited to mirrorless cameras. If you want to become a hybrid creator who shoots both photo and video, I would argue that in-body image stabilization is absolutely essential. It can provide you with options for smooth and steady shots in situations where you have to handhold your camera while shooting video. Now, the third difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is the viewfinder. DSLRs use an optical viewfinder, also known as an OVF. As we discussed at the beginning of this video, light enters through the lens, reflects off a mirror, and then passes through a pentaprism to reach the viewfinder. Now, on the other hand, mirrorless cameras use an electronic viewfinder, also known as an EVF. These display a digital feed directly from the image sensor, which means that you're seeing a processed image that can include exposure, white balance, and other camera settings in real time. The viewfinder is often one of the most commonly debated differences between these two types of cameras, and there are benefits to each. An optical viewfinder has the advantage of allowing you to see the viewfinder in real time without any digital processing. More specifically, this means no lag between what you see in the real world, which is very important for shooting fast-moving subjects, and no additional battery consumption. Now, an electronic viewfinder has the advantage of providing a more accurate preview of the final image. They can also display more information, including live histograms and focus peaking. And on top of this, if you're shooting on a bright, sunny day, you can even review your images through the viewfinder while you're shooting. And most importantly, they don't black out while taking a picture, whereas an optical viewfinder in a DSLR will black out momentarily because the mirror is flipped up to allow light to reach the image sensor, which blocks the optical pathway between the lens and the viewfinder. The fourth difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is the silent shooting functionality. The mirror mechanism in a DSLR will always generate noise no matter how quiet that they're advertised to be. This mechanical sound is part of how DSLRs operate, which makes truly silent shooting almost impossible to achieve. In contrast, because mirrorless cameras pass light directly through to the sensor, the absence of that mirror slap significantly reduces the amount of noise being made. Not only that, but many mirrorless cameras also offer an electronic shutter mode, which allows for completely silent shooting. This works by turning the sensor on and off electronically without any physical movement. Now, it's important to note that DSLRs can also technically do the same thing with live view mode, where the mirror is flipped up and light hits the image sensor directly, bypassing the optical viewfinder. This provides a digital preview of the scene, just like in mirrorless cameras where there's no reflex mirror to redirect light to an optical viewfinder. The difference is that the viewfinder becomes unusable while shooting in live view mode. Now, the fifth difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is sensor cleaning. DSLRs typically use a mechanism where the reflex mirror flips up, exposing the sensor for cleaning or maintenance. On the other hand, mirrorless cameras have the sensor exposed directly to the environment, which can actually make them more prone to dust and debris. But many mirrorless cameras are equipped with ultrasonic vibration mechanisms or other automated sensor cleaning features that help to dislodge and remove dust particles from the sensor surface without the need for manual intervention. Now, the sixth difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is burst and shutter speed. Because DSLRs use a mechanical shutter, each time a photo is taken in burst mode, the shutter has to move, expose the sensor, and then reset before it can take another shot. This process inherently has a limit to how fast it can occur due to the mechanical constraints of the shutter mechanism. On top of this, the movement of the shutter introduces a delay between shots, which is often known as shutter lag, and this further slows down the burst shooting process. As a result, the maximum burst speed of a DSLR is limited by how quickly the shutter can physically move and reset between shots. The same rule applies to a mirrorless camera when shooting with the mechanical curtain, but when shooting with the electronic shutter, burst speeds can be completely unlocked. There are no mechanical parts to be reset, which is why you see cameras like the Canon R6 Mark II, which is capable of shooting 40 pictures per second in burst mode with the electronic shutter. Not only that, but electronic shutters also allow for higher shutter speeds, given that the camera is simply turning the sensor on and off when exposing a picture. And this is why you'll see mirrorless cameras with a shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second or more. Moving along, the seventh difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is battery life. In general, this is not a rule of thumb, but DSLRs tend to have better battery life. This is because the optical viewfinder doesn't require any power to operate. In contrast, the electronic viewfinder inside of mirrorless cameras is a tiny screen which does consume battery power. Many people become very apprehensive about this when they see the CIPA rating of a camera, which measures the number of shots a camera can capture on a single battery charge under standardized conditions like temperature, flash usage, image review time, and so on. But it's important to recognize that real-world use might vary significantly from those conditions. Factors like your shooting habits, the environment, and camera settings can all influence actual battery performance. In my personal experience, major improvements in power management have narrowed the gap in this category. Mirrorless cameras now offer very respectable battery life, especially with the use of larger battery capacities or grip accessories. The eighth difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is autofocus performance. DSLRs traditionally use phase detection autofocus, which involves a dedicated autofocus sensor separate from the image sensor. On the other hand, mirrorless cameras typically use contrast detection autofocus, or they use a combination of contrast and phase detection autofocus, which is known as hybrid autofocus. Advancements in mirrorless camera technology have significantly improved autofocus performance over the years. A lot of mirrorless cameras now feature advanced autofocus systems with sophisticated algorithms and eye detection and artificial intelligence, which offers fast, precise autofocus performance comparable to or even surpassing DSLRs in many situations. Finally, the ninth difference between DSLRs and mirrorless cameras is video performance. You might have noticed that most of the advantages and disadvantages described in this tutorial have nothing to do with video, because the mirror and the shutter mechanism have no impact on it whatsoever. As I mentioned earlier, DSLRs that shoot video will do so in a live view mode, where the mirror is flipped up and the light hits the image sensor directly, bypassing the optical viewfinder. With that being said, mirrorless cameras will usually offer more advanced features and better performance for video production, especially when it comes to the in-body image stabilization. This mostly has to do with the fact that they're newer and therefore they're capable of shooting at higher frame rates and higher resolutions. You're probably not going to find an 8K video mode in a DSLR DSLR like you will in a mirrorless camera, such as the Canon R5. So if you want to be a hybrid creator, choosing between a DSLR and a mirrorless camera can significantly impact your ability to deliver quality work. But I also shot video with DSLRs for nearly a decade, and they never hindered me from doing what I was trying to do, so the decision is still yours to make. So there you have it, the 9 main differences between a DSLR and a mirrorless camera. It goes without saying that mirrorless cameras offer a lot of newer and superior features, such as in-body image stabilization, electronic viewfinders, and silent shooting functionality, but DSLRs still have their strengths. I know a few sports photographers who still swear by the real-time feedback they receive when they're using an optical viewfinder. The choice ultimately depends on your specific preferences and shooting style. Consider the importance of all these factors when making your decision. If you want to learn how I took incredible pictures like these ones, some of them with a DSLR, others with a mirrorless camera, by combining lighting, color, composition, and my secrets to great pictures, be sure to check out my online photography school, Speedy Photographer. This is the ultimate online photography school with the easiest, simplest tutorials that can teach you how to take stunning pictures that can impress all of your friends and family with your phone or with your professional camera. Here's one student who started by taking pictures that looked like this and eventually began taking pictures like this while also making money doing it. So be sure to check that out if you're interested, link in the description below. Lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more high value content just like this, and I'll see you in the next video.